China is planning to put their spymaster in the foreign minister role, just as we thought that there's too many spies from China, now they're doubling down. Welcome to China Insider, I'm David Zhang. In our last episode, I introduced the 4 different branches of Chinese intelligence, and one of them was called the International Liaison Office or Liaison Department. And according to a report, the German intelligence agency last year in August, actually, it was the first time a foreign agency named the Liaison Office as a spy agency. While the front of this department is international relationship for the CCP, it's a PR political office basically, but in reality, it's technically still a spy agency. It is true that it was one of the main focus to have so-called party-to-party engagements back in the days when it was first created, where they would go and say engage with different political parties across the political spectrum. But most of the focus was on the communist parties in various different countries. Now it has extended into parties, politicians, and any affiliates across all sorts of political. For example, there's the conservative parties, they will approach People's Party, Liberal Party, the Democratic Party, Republican Party. It's any party that they can go and have a really in-depth relationship with. And this includes in both developing countries as well as developed countries. In other words, it's a foreign affairs office in the party that seeks to change another party's perception about China. The head of the department, Liu Jianchao, is now rumored to be the next foreign minister. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He plays this nice role that seems to appear to be a moderate versus an aggressive diplomat, and he seems to disguise his real intentions behind this mask of niceness. So what happens to when the head of this spy agency, the spymaster, becomes the head of the foreign ministry? Well, for a while, the CCP has fused the spy agencies to that of foreign diplomacy. And this is just one of the steps to further consolidate that. Now, considering we're all so familiar now with the CCP aggressive diplomacy called wolf warrior diplomacy, just look at what happened in the UK and across the spectrum. Now, Chinese diplomats, they act out this way very aggressively because it's in the national policy under the CCP to do so, because they want to express their comprehensive national power to pretend like they are the most powerful in the world. As we just saw with the pianist Brett Kavanaugh situation in the UK in London, this idea often translates into pointless aggression, and often it kind of backfires. So the latest move to have him be the next foreign minister, in my view, is a PR stunt in a move that's seen by some people as apparently, or very wishful, of course, that the CCP's aggression will be toned down. But think about it, what this really means is that the spies in China are now running the foreign policy as well. So why is it important for us here? Well, think about it. Next time that you're dealing with a Chinese diplomat or even somebody that's with, one of the important roles in the Overseas Chinese Association S type of situation, you're really dealing with a spy, 100%, because, the head of their department was a spymaster. And think about this, right? How many elites are captured? How many situations where it's an official diplomatic situation, but there's an underneath sort of unofficial, if you know what I mean, with how many people have dirty secrets, how many have been honey trapped, how many of them have been exposed or they're being blackmailed. So it's almost like they're comprehensively taking what they know, right? Remember, this is a party-to-party engagement department, the International Liaison Office. They've collected some really top-level intelligence on the political elites of various different countries. So they have access to that. And now, think about it, the next time they engage in official diplomatic meeting, say between the US and China or US and European countries, what's going to happen to the decision-making process of that country and those that are in power? Because one of the most common methods used by the liaison office is that they will, essentially it's elite capture, right? They will invite the person that they're trying to woo to China to change their perception on China. Essentially, they're creating this way of brainwashing them or giving them incentives in which when they return, will be speaking on behalf of the CCP in their own country. What they call is correcting their perception of China. Especially this is being heavily focused on those, say, congressmen or parliamentarians who have sort of a neutral view. Somebody that can actually be swayed, right? You're not going to go to a hardline China hawk in the US Congress and try to sway them. It's impossible. The ultimate goal is for them to understand the CCP values. So you could see it as one of the different levels in society in which this particular department can reach that normally other spy agencies cannot. And of course, this is also a core interest of the United Front Department as well as other intelligence agencies, but it is just that this one is very specific and there's not a lot of information known about the liaison office. And because they're able to target those government and party elites. If you're a spy sent by for example, the Ministry of State Security, your access to maybe say local officials, and that'll give you some intelligence. But if you're from the liaison office, you would have access to, say, the federal government level or even the legislative branch of a certain country and what their lawmakers have. Now, if you remember, the former foreign minister Qin Gang, his whereabouts are still unknown. Is he dead or alive? Nobody knows. And so this move, which is rumored to take place in March of this year, is going to be a big interesting turnaround because what happened to the other guy? And what's going to happen to this guy if he doesn't do well? Now, prior to this news came out, we had the Taiwan election, and just days before that, Liu he went on a 5-day trip to the United States. He met with Tony Blinken, and he had a whole discussion around the U.S.-China relations, particularly with the Taiwan election involved. And this really tells us that even though they're engaging in official diplomatic stances with the other side, in reality, they're much more comprehensive in their unofficial capacity. Think of it like if the CIA director was also the Secretary of State, or the MI6 chief is also the Foreign Affairs Minister. Nobody has time for two roles. Now, interestingly, this man, because of his background and education, is an Oxford grad. He's done extensive diplomacy work in the foreign ministry, actually, so he's no stranger to this department. But he's always been packaged as a diplomat rather than the head of a spy agency. And interestingly, he's gone through to be the witness for the entire transformation of how the Chinese foreign ministry went from disguising themselves and their real intentions to this wolf warrior aggression to now wanting to turn back again to that of wolf in a sheep's clothing. And so this whole time, he's witnessed all of it. And he's always been appearing on the moderate side of things. So will it actually work, turning China's aggressive diplomacy around? What we've seen so far is every time in the past few years that Xi Jinping has tried to pivot away from this aggression, this totally bizarre situation of how they react to things, as we've seen in the UK just a few days ago, they've actually failed. Why is that? Well, because just like the piano incident, everyone in the CCP, they're so brainwashed and so filled with really unwarranted nationalism in the sense that they think that they're fighting for the country and fighting for China. They're really just being the barking dogs of the CCP. So in that sense, they're always doing the party's bidding, and no matter where they go, the nationalism that's kind of seeping out of them, and they're when they talk, right, this way, it's always seen as unwarranted aggression in some cases. In most cases, it's just seen as strange behaviors. And I mean, now every incident like the one with Brett Kavanaugh and the piano becomes an international headline, and it further deteriorates the reputation of the CCP. Because every time this type of events happen, they always link that particular person to the diplomatic side of things for the CCP. And so their reputation has gone way bad than ever before. And so in this particular time, it's very hard for people to just openly say that, okay, we're going to believe you that you're going to turn back 180 around, right, to the good old days. Nobody's going to believe you. But that's precisely the process right now with Xi Jinping and the CCP policies. He does these extreme 180 turns because when things go bad, he tries to pivot to the other side. Instead of swinging it back to the middle, it goes to the other extreme. Look, people have memories, right? Like I just said, especially in the Western world, there's something called credibility. There's something called trust and reputation. And if all these things are broken, it's very hard for somebody to repair that. That's why the whole credit rating system is so brutal for people. Good people have good credits, bad people have bad credits, and in turn they can't get things like loans, or they can't get a good interest rate on their loans, and these type of things, right? So imagine if you're the CCP, you have a really bad credit rating right now. Now, back in the days, because the CCP was so rich, they didn't really have to care about the credit rating, right? You can just buy your way through different countries. You can bribe people, you can use economic warfare to achieve what you wanted. But today, China doesn't have any money left. People that were able to be bought back in the days with money aren't getting the same amount of treatments today simply because China doesn't have enough. And so in this particular time now, money really isn't talking. And plus, like I just mentioned, there's a global shift in the view and perception of the Chinese Communist Party. And so everybody can see clearly that you're a wolf with a sheep's wool on top, you're not a sheep, right? Everybody can see how aggressive you are. And this looming threat over, say, Taiwan, or every time there's a country that does something, you start an economic warfare against them, like Australia or Taiwan. These things people do remember. And one thing you have to know, the reason why Xi Jinping does these extreme pivots is because he cares all about his face image or his reputation. With Qin, for example, after he was removed as a foreign minister, who replaced him was the former foreign minister before him. So it was Qin predecessor, Wang Yi. Now, Wang Yi is like the biggest wolf of all wolves, like the king wolf of aggression, right? So when he came back after he sort of retired from the role, he really just kicked up a lot of diplomatic crises in the past year or so. We've seen Xi Jinping was in South Africa attending the BRICS summit. The video, right? He had to walk down the red carpet by himself because his translator got stopped by the bodyguard. That was seen as a huge embarrassment and a diplomatic crisis for the CCP. When he was in Vietnam a few months later, the subtle treatments that he was getting really was embarrassing for him. And so all these, plus the recent case with Brett Kavanaugh, with Mr. K and the piano, that's also adding a lot of reputational damage to the CCP. So we see that now he's reacting by getting somebody who is apparently a moderate. Here's why he can't really be a moderate. Xi Jinping has a lot of trust issues. The people that he puts into power, they're not in there for their abilities. They're in there for their loyalty. At least right now, to Xi Jinping, it seems like this is the most loyal person. Now, if you are the CCP, you're Xi Jinping, since 2012, you've been on this trajectory of saying that you're the strongest country in the world, that you can compete against the United States. Now, for you to try to back out of this, right, you've already built a reputation for doing that. So when you want to back out over a span of, say, a few months, it's very hard to do that. And so this has happened before. Qin was also seen as relatively a moderate, but look what happened to him. He was promptly removed because of other issues, of course, but every time there's a change within this diplomatic core of the CCP, something bad happens, right? So, I don't want to keep talking about the piano situation, but that's actually one of the very concrete example, is that we see what happens when diplomacy goes wrong. And so I really see a hard time for them to try to shift back from it. Now, it also shows us that Xi Jinping has a personnel issue. He's running out of people or at least new people, or people that actually can bring a rejuvenation to his policies to get into key positions. And so he's always going back to the people that used to have. And that's really a reflection of his clear internal and external issues. And another reason why Liu is going to fail as foreign minister to appeal to this moderate sort of way is because the overall propaganda machine that's been turning in China, they've created a generation where people are more nationalistic than ever. And so this is you're recalling back to the Mao era, where you have a group of people who are very communist, and then you have a group of people who's more communist, more radical than they are. And so today, if you're not achieving the level of nationalism and the level of radicalism in China, you're only going to be seen as not loyal enough, not patriotic enough, and not nationalistic enough. And in turn, you're going to be replaced, I'm talking public opinion now, by those voices that are more nationalistic than they are. And so this is more than just one part of the government that's going to try to appeal to be more moderate. You can't, because the entire wave is pushing you towards the extreme. So if you're trying to go against that wave, it's very hard. Even if Xi Jinping tries it, the overall national situation is now different. So really, Xi Jinping faces the external reputational problems, the internal wave of nationalism, and also he's running out of people. And so against all that, putting Liu in this position, who is a former spymaster, isn't going to solve any of those diplomatic issues that he's been facing over the past few years. All right, that's today for the episode on China's spymaster becoming the next foreign minister. If you enjoy the content, leave a like, comment below your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, bye-bye.